Hi, my name is Rory, and I'm here from the Varietal, and I'm here with two other Varietal writers. Down below me here is Spencer, and over to my side here is Dayna Mahannah. And what we're going to do today is we're going to hear a few selections, some poems from Dayna's chapbook. Is that the right term there, Dayna?
I
Chapbook.
would s- I would say chapbook is correct. I think it kind of refers more specifically to something that's kind of like more handmade.
Oh,
I might
does
be
it?
totally wrong, but
I don't know.
but
I
I
think you're
would say
probably
that
right.
let's just go with that. I want to start off right. That's a good foot to start on.
There's so many odd iterations of writing formats, the novel, the novella, the short story, well, it's not a novella. Anyways, I will take your word on it. Your handcrafted, hand printed chapbooks. Uh, you personally hand wrote them all.
Well, no. So this is where I'm going to deviate from what I just said before, but it's self-published.
Yes.
So
Yeah. No.
I did send it to a printer, but I will say I had full creative control, except for when the printers kind of messed up.
All right.
But then they
Well,
reprinted it.
let me give people a bit more context before we go into all that.
Right.
Dayna is going to be reading from her chapbook, "Burn Your House." That's what it's called, correct?
Burn your house down to save it from the fire.
Ah,
Yes.
well, my layout says "Burn Your House" because I couldn't fit all that on. I wasn't sure if that was the full title or not. I apologize. I've already failed you. So the rest of this will be just a blank screen where I am and quiet sobs in the corner.
Nowhere to go but up.
Yeah.
Um, the yeah, we're gonna hear. I think it's four poems, correct?
That is correct.
And then afterwards, Spencer and I are going to grill you with cutting questions that really pin down who you are. That are fundamentally, I think, if I had to say in a word what our questions are like, they're violating. So,
Right. Yeah, I
How
don't know
much
why
do
I
you know
agreed to
about
do this.
quantum physics?
Luckily, I have the internet at hand.
I don't think that's going to help you with quantum
No,
physics.
you're right.
I
I
have a
think
lot of questions.
Yeah, so do I. Think about that.
in this serious art show that we're putting on right now, so we'll start with you just reading your poems, and I'm going to quietly sit here and listen. And when you are complete, we'll just talk about them. Is that good with you, Dana?
That sounds great.
It'd be really weird if you just said no. You're like,
Out of
Yeah.
here.
no, I'm out. It just goes black. This whole video is me and Spencer talking to each other about how you might have answered.
Step into Dana's shoes.
All right. I'm going to go on mute and let you take your center stage.
Okay. Thank you, Rory and Spencer. So this is my self-published book. I've got my sticky notes in here, like a real professional poet. Burn your house down to save it from the fire. And I'm just going to read 4 of the 15 poems. So there's a lot more where these will have come from. So just, yeah, to give you a little bit more context about the book, it was written as a sort of response to the anxiety I was feeling about the climate crisis, or I guess am feeling. And so that's what the theme of this book of poetry is, and that might make it make a little bit more sense. So the first poem is called Empathy. Empathy. Asked what it makes you feel, you say, sad. Asked how it makes you feel, you say, like the ants you seared with sun rays through the mean side of a magnifying glass. A lot of these poems are very short. So, um, thank you. Thank you. The silent claps. That's so polite. Okay, this is one of the really long ones. So get ready, get comfortable. This is called Observations of the Upside. This one was inspired by a road trip I was on with my cousin and my sister, and we were driving through the Okanagan, and it was summertime, and yeah, I think I was trying to find some of the positive things around me rather than like focusing on all of these scary side effects of the climate crisis. Observations of the upside. Trees, trees, unburnt. Aren't all roads forever if you take the right turns? The radio says, hello, hello, hello. The double yellow line morphs into perforated highway, tear away, and every few kilometers, locally grown fruit roll across the floor of the rented Toyota. Relics of destinations past, framed by backseat windows. A river audacious enough gushes by, and it does not linger. The radio says, come water me, oh, oh. For a moment, the pavement here just doesn't bake the same. Maybe traffic stretches time into see-through gauze. The peaches taste like shade. So that's one of the longer pieces. Yeah, I'm like, how much information should I give you about these? Maybe I should just wait for the
You
real
can,
sesh.
because we'll definitely drag it out of you.
Okay. Oh yeah, this is out of order now. Okay, so the next one is called Too Late Stage Capitalism. This was me imagining the end and what it might look like and who might be left. Too Late Stage Capitalism. Thinking ahead lost relevance the year the bees died. Still, honey prices rocketed. 10,000 a jar. Marketed as the nectar of the tears of the sun god Ra, who hath, with his fury, cried till the flowers swam, and while the people in the castles in the hills searched Google for ancient Egyptian embalming practices, their moats grew florid with the bodies of the valley people draped in bloated bees and wet roses. Okay, that one's a little bit more on the depressing side. But this one's really joyous. So this one, the friend I refer to in this is actually someone who we all went to school with at TWS, the Writer's Studio. I ran into him one day. His name is Jonathan, and we just had this really funny exchange, and I was just like, wow, that was so like morbid but funny. So that's this one. Survival cred. Murder, suicide. The subject of one of those pre-apocalyptic jokes told between old friends passing in the street on a Sunday night. Oh, how their laughter lit up the end in sight. And that's that.
Yay.
Nice.
11 more.
That's awesome. All right.
Thank you.
Well, I have this hard-hitting, fully animated graphic that goes, question time! But it's not working right now, so I guess,
no.
sorry guys. Guess we'll just have to personally say that we have it.
Just scream it.
How you feeling so far? How does it feel to read your work?
Actually, I thought I was going to be much more nervous, but I guess, I'm sitting at home drinking strawberry bubbly, and this is pretty nice, actually. I miss live readings, so it's kind of nice, and I don't often have the opportunity to just like read my work out loud where other people are listening, unless I'm just like sitting at home alone doing it, which I
Yeah.
don't do. Um, but
Just
uh,
standing in the mirror. Your partner comes in. What are you doing? Get out! This is a reading. God damn it!
sounds like me. I mean, the only reason I ever do that is to either practice for a reading or read my like a first draft out loud and be like, does this sound nuts? And then I read it out loud. I'm like, yes or no.
Hmm.
Do you
Yeah.
practice a lot for readings?
Um, I mean, if I am doing one, then yeah, I will definitely spend some time reading. So, especially if there's like a time limit, which there is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Spencer? Do you practice readings or ahead of time, or do you just wing it?
I've definitely practiced. Yeah, I mean, I haven't done a whole ton of readings in my short writing career yet. So the few that I've done, I've definitely practiced a little bit. But I mean, there's only so much practice you can do. Reading from your scripts, like your actual text, is kind of hard because you're not really attempting to memorize anything, and you don't want to like, I don't know, have those Freudian slips where you think you have something memorized and then you read something wrong. And I don't know. I just trust my reading skills, which are poor, but I do my best to read out loud and, just hit all the marks so that no one's confused. Just, really reduce confusion is my main goal. So, yeah.
I think it's probably a function of my background in theater, but I practice excessively, like
Yeah.
hours, and like I'll record it and I'll be like, no, that doesn't work, and then change it. And I do try to memorize, but there's only so many times you can do that. That's not the way to be, kids, by the way. Don't do that. The outcomes are
that
the
sounds
same.
nerve-wracking.
Yeah, it's horrible. You just make it worse. Like that thing I did for Spiel. Like I have like 10 videos on my phone somewhere that I need to delete of me practicing that and after hours at work and stuff. Anyway,
Oh
Shout
man,
out to Spiel.
what's that?
Shout out to Spiel.
yeah, that's right. Shout
Yeah.
out to Spiel. Half of Spiel's brain trust here. If you don't
Wow,
know
that's
Spiel, you should
personal.
follow them on
Love that.
Instagram. They do live readings in Vancouver, sort of events.
Online now.
Yeah, obviously not going on right now. So there's one coming at the end of the month, which some of our writers will probably be participating in if we're not lazy.
Yeah, maybe I can post it in the comments, the link to it.
Sure.
But if,
Yeah.
yeah, people want to check that out. But yeah, I remember that spiel that you're talking about, and I remember you, I think you were probably one of the first people there. You were there early, and you were like in the zone.
Yeah.
You were like sitting down, and you wouldn't talk to anyone, and you were
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
so focused, practicing. And then, but you delivered. You gave this amazing, like.
This isn't
Like,
about me.
It was so great, but it was, yeah, I think practice did do you well at that moment.
Yeah, I'm nothing if not pretentious, really. So, like you'd mentioned before, you have a chapbook of poems on this topic that you call sort of collectively climate anxiety. And you said a little bit on this when you were doing the readings, but I wanted to follow up on it. Why, like, what brought about the book? Was it you wrote a lot of poems, noticed a theme, where like, I think I could keep building on this theme, or was it more intentional? Like, I want to write a bunch of poems about this feeling I'm having. Like, which direction did it go? Was it stuff you wrote that happened to gel, or was it you started from a feeling and then set out to do that?
Good question. I owe this book to my friend Halem, who we worked together at Adbusters, and she is a graphic designer and she loves making books. And we'd kind of been talking about collaborating on some kind of project before. And so she was actually pushing me to write she had another project that she wanted to do, and then she was pushing me to like write something that I could create into a little book, because she also wanted to practice her bookmaking skills. Um, and so yeah, she kind of kept bugging me about it until I finally pulled through. But I think I had maybe a couple, maybe two or three poems that kind of fit into this theme. It was just something that had been on my mind a lot at the time, and I was uh, it was really bothering me, and it seemed so constant, this sort of like underlying anxiety about the future and about the climate. And it just seemed like everywhere I went and everywhere I looked, there was a sign of it. And it made me feel so uncomfortable and nervous. And so it actually just felt very natural to me that I could produce some work within this theme. And poetry is not something that it's always been something that I have done on my own. And like, it's just been very much for me, and I don't really share it. And so this is the first time I really wrote poetry that I was going to put out into the world. And yeah, I think because I don't necessarily like identify as a poet or as someone who writes poetry, it felt more low stakes, and like I had more creative freedom to like take risks, and didn't feel so concerned about how it was going to be received, or like yeah, I didn't get a lot of self-doubt, which is what I'm constantly feeling in terms of all my other writing. So
Yeah, I gotta say, no, not trying to make light of it or anything. It surprises to me to hear you say that, because self doubt, I mean, to put it frankly, is kind of almost a part of your process. Like you definitely genuinely have a lot of self doubt, and in the coping with that, you come up with ideas for writing and how to get past these things. So it's surprising to me that it was simple for you. I mean, I personally find poetry terrifying. I don't know about yourself, Spencer.
Oh yeah, not a great poet. Really like to stick to what I'm comfortable with, which is, anything else really. But Dana, I'm curious to know, like, and for listeners out there, like, how long ago did you write these poems? And then two-parter, like, how long did it take to sort of put them to like actually finish the poems?
Good question.
so these were written kind of a little bit all over the place. So this was published in 2019, and that was yeah, when Halem kind of was uh, getting at me to write some poetry, and then I started writing on this theme. But I some of the poems in here, like the first ones that I had before we came up with this idea, was written when I was in Ghana in 2017, and they just kind of fit into the theme. And then uh, yeah, and then I sort of wrote the rest of them like within that time period. I think within like a few months, I went to Haida Gwaii to work at a fishing lodge there, and so that was a really great source of inspiration. And then just like in Vancouver, and then on a road trip, and that was sort of, yeah, how those kind of came about.
Yeah, that's really neat to hear because obviously these poems span like a few years, a few different locations. But when I read them, and I do have my own copy in the all black version, which is really cool, you can kind of see the
Mm-hmm.
light reflecting off the text there. Your voice and like the tone of the poems are so consistent, and Rory and I are very familiar with your work. So for me,
Mhm.
it was just very much like this is on brand for Dana, and it's really cool to hear that all of these things came from different times and places. So I'm also interested to know like how you felt revisiting them tonight, reading them, and maybe like how you've sort of like if there's been any change to your climate anxiety, or if like because it's something we're all dealing with. And like I
Yeah.
think about like the fact that it's been a long time coming now that we've kind of been introduced to even like the climate crisis as young adults moving into adulthood. And, it's something that we're dealing with on an ongoing, you know, timeline. So it's just interesting to hear you read these now. And I'd be, curious to know your experience reading them and tackling a little bit of that anxiety. I don't know.
Yeah, I know that we've kind of talked about this before, Spencer, about like climate anxiety and having that sort of underlying feeling all the time. And I don't know, I think that was maybe a year or two ago, but I think um, anxiety is kind of like shifted a little bit where I don't know, maybe I've become more comfortable with it in a way. And I think my focus has shifted a bit more to like zoning in on like specific things that um, maybe I can do about it. Like I'm working on this podcast with my friend Maggie, and we're kind of it focuses on the Wet'suwet'en crisis, but it kind of delves into the different aspects of it, like the environmental aspect, like politics, the economics of it, and so I don't know. It feels like everything always boils down to the climate crisis and the environment, and like that is kind of the number one most important thing. Um, so yeah, I think reading these, they feel very um, they're pretty like light, and I try to like bring in a bit of a sense of humor because I think that's the way I can best deal with things that make me uncomfortable. And then I think it's also a lot more palatable for people and makes it easier to look at and give your attention to, and that's really important. So um, yeah, I think I don't feel that constant hum of anxiety for some reason, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know. Then like the pandemic happened. It's just
Yeah.
like I don't know how much I can process at
Yeah.
once.
Yeah. No,
Like,
I hear that.
how do you guys feel? Rory, is that something that is on your mind much?
I think it's a bit of a weird time in my life where I think, honestly, just because of the pandemic, I think a lot of feelings have just kind of gone dead. Like I can't process anything anymore. Like you flip on Twitter and it's another thing, and it's gotten to the point where it's like, I guess that's it. That's the world. Like I'm sort of fighting nihilism, if you will. Um, but I will say that the climate thing remains vibrant. Every new terrifying report about it remains vibrant in my mind. I think I don't think everyone is going to agree with this, but I think because I feel like it's not that complicated. Like when I look at things like colonization and social justice issues, those are complex. Like to unweave that basket would take a lot. But as much as people try to complicate climate change and how to deal with it, I mean, the people who have vested interests in it, nothing changing, do. But I don't think it's actually complicated. And so when things come up about it, I guess I don't feel as desperately lost and tired about it as I do about so many things. I think also, though, what I'm trying to say is I'm not committed to that. I think a lot of that is just a survival mechanism from a year of endless uncertainty, and everything from going to a grocery store is a moral decision. So I think there's just a kind of fatigue and exhaustion, the accumulation of little things that amount to a kind of trauma response for myself. The something I did want to ask about was why these four in particular, because you have several in your chapbook. And I guess what I'm curious about is, are they just your favorites, or do you see sort of a thread between them, and that's why you wanted those four together?
Yeah, I think I was trying to take, I mean, I guess my favorites, which I didn't end up choosing all my favorites, because that's just biased. But
You're allowed to be biased. You're reading.
but I don't know. I wanted something that also kind of captured the like beginning to end thread of the whole book, and sort of got a little bit of the different like views, and had a little bit of a beginning, middle, end, if you will, in these four short poems. Yeah, I think I tried to order them that way as well when I was reading them. Something that sort of um, like survival credit kind of left on like a, you know, morbidly, like darkly comedic note, because I think that it's important to give weight to the situation, but then also be like, yeah, we can have a laugh about it a little bit, because I think that I don't know, as humans, we have the unique ability to have like a sense of humor about things. And that's one of, I think, our greatest gifts, like that we are able to laugh and we can share laughter, and it feels so good. And yeah, I it's like the one saving grace, I think, in all of this is that um, humor is something that can prevail. I don't know, maybe that's a very naive thing to say, but yeah, I think that's kind of always the thing that I turn to. And the beginning, yeah, I think it just kind of had a bit of both sides, where it had some like um, a poem that kind of looks at sort of the upsides, and like still noticing some of the beautiful things about our world, even if they're just really tiny things. There are still so many great, wonderful, large, beautiful things in the world, but I think just noticing also the little things is can provide a lot of like joy and relief, when sometimes maybe that's all your like scope of vision will allow. I definitely get like, like my perspective just totally minimizes if I'm feeling really down or
Yeah.
anxious or something.
Yeah.
So, you're like, I can only see 3 feet in front of me. What's there?
Yeah, I've noticed that negative thoughts have a real they really move the fog line forward, like, yeah, as far as how well you can see. I think it's also interesting to me, you're talking about how you want to have a sense of humor and all that, but you still want it to take it seriously. But I do feel like the book is very specifically focused at the people that are kind of subject to this condition. And like, I feel like I don't think it's necessarily generationally restricted, but obviously the biggest preponderance of people that are going to be affected by climate change are millennials and Gen Z. And there is a sense of helplessness to it, because a lot of the decisions being made about it are still not being made by people from us, or whatever else. And so I think when you're in a room with friends kind of suffering together, humor is what you got left. So I felt like it was very appropriate to have some humor in it.
That's good.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning, and you already spoke to probably most of it, all you have to say about the humor, but this book is so funny. And I feel like, yeah, Rory, you mentioned like, being with your friends and suffering together. I feel like this book is like a good friend to have when when it all does become just a little too much, and you're thinking about the climate crisis and just capitalism and the state of the world. You can return to these poems again and again, and they're always funny. Like even like the title itself, "Burn Your House Down to Save It from the Fire," is obviously just, it's hilarious and it's true and it's absolutely wild and it's absurd, but it's just got just such a good sensibility to it. And you read the Too Late Stage Capitalism, where it's like a fictionalization of what the future will be like, and there's just these elite, rich, godly
Yeah.
people. And it's just funny. Like it dips into the absurd. It celebrates language. It's like beautifully written, and it's still always like it's always funny, but it's always talking about like the most serious thing that you could talk about. And I really appreciate that about the work for sure.
Very comforting.
Oh,
Yeah.
Very comforting.
thank you.
I on that point, is there a reason why you chose to tackle this topic in poetry and not other formats? Like, is there something that you see the medium of poetry bringing to this moment in your life, or capturing it in a unique way that other things wouldn't have? Why poetry?
Oh yeah, that is. Well, I think that, like I was saying before, poetry for me is something that feels a little more low stakes, and it's always been something that um, has felt. It has like a certain like low barrier for some reason to me. Like has an easier access point than like um, fiction or nonfiction. I think because I expect so much from myself when I'm writing fiction or nonfiction. Like, I really have to, yeah, I like am very hard on myself about like what the result is going to be. And with poetry, it feels a little bit more freeing. Like, I don't know if you guys ever do free writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I think that that sense that free writing gives me where you just like go in, no thoughts, just kind of like right off the cuff, whatever comes into your head. You don't worry about grammar, you don't worry about if it sounds stupid. And I think poetry gives me that freedom when I approach it. And then yeah, I'd never really gone back and edited my poetry before, so that was also a new experience where I was like, okay, I can look at this and make it better and rethink it. And I think that the poetry just made it feel like I'm taking this massive topic that makes me feel really freaked out and I don't know how to process it. And so it just seemed appropriate for me to try to make it succinct, I guess, the feelings that I was having. And yeah, it felt like the feelings were so big that I'm like, if I mess up the poetry, it's just something that I don't have to like be too worried about getting rid of. I can just write another one. Whereas with nonfiction, I feel like I usually put in so it's so difficult for me, I think, to like get out 500 words for it to not work out would just be another like thing on top of this topic that already makes me feel bad. So yeah, that was a really long answer to that, but
That's
yeah.
interesting. I mean, the point is to talk about why you make decisions that you do. On the topic of crafting poems, I have a more technical question for you, because it is something that I find I struggle with when I do, because I do write poetry. I just will never ever air it anywhere. It's not good. But when you write a poem, like, what aspects of a poem do you favor? So in other words, if you have a competition where like you have a really clear image, or you can preserve the cadence, what do you go for? Do you preserve the cadence, or do you go for the image? When it comes to things like the narrative, if you feel like, well, I have this good line and it's musical and I want to put it in, but it's going to kind of detract from the narrative, like, do you leave it out in favor of that? Like, how do you balance those decisions in a poem? Are you a poet who favors your cadence and rhythm? Are you a poet who favors your imagery? Are you a poet who favors your narrative? Like, how do you make decisions?
Oh man. Um I think that uh, cadence for me feels like it's um, fairly like malleable, I guess. Like it feels like I always feel like I have fairly good control of that. Most and I usually like that's mostly um, done by the line breaks that I choose.
Right.
Um, so I think for me that never seems like something that I have to sacrifice. Um, but imagery, um, yeah, I think imagery for me is it is really important. Um, with poems, I kind of also like these are most of them are like concrete poems, so they kind of take a certain shape, or they I find that I'll kind of use the theme of the poem or the content of the poem to literally like physically shape what the poem looks like, and so that's part of the imagery for me as well. So I always loved that, like from when I was a kid doing poetry in elementary school. I always thought that concrete poems were just so brilliant.
Do you want to like define them for the audience? Everybody might not know what a concrete poem is. I mean,
Right. So
you kind of did, but more specific.
yeah. Well, a concrete poem is basically a poem that will physically take a certain shape on the page. So, like for example, I have this one poem that is in the shape of a heart. So the words create a heart because it talks about it's kind of a take on I see trees of green, red roses too. So like I'll show you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I think I remember
That's a
this poem.
concrete
Yeah.
poem. Yeah, and yeah, narrative. Sometimes the poem is literally just about an image, so it's
Right.
just sort of expressing an image. And sometimes there's more narrative ones, like the too late stage capitalism. So, yeah, I would say that each one will kind of focus more on narrative or imagery, and so I guess the balance is more that each one um, takes precedent in whatever poem.
So it shifts depending on what
Yeah.
your goal is in the poem. Interesting.
Hmm.
I wanted a more black and white answer so that I could write better poetry, but your answer was you just kind of need to be a good poet with good judgment, and I mean that's a pretty high hill for me to climb.
What makes you think that your poetry's bad?
I've read it.
Is it just the self doubt though, or is it?
I don't think it is because I don't have a lot of self doubt about like short stories I write. I don't think I've written anything that like deserves a Booker Prize or anything like that. I don't think I'm like a legendary, groundbreaking short story writer, but I have pretty good confidence at this point that I can do it. And I mean, I think that was maybe part of the motivation and why it wasn't nerve-wracking to me to start a thing like or some of the versions of lit games we've done where you're just writing a story. Like I feel like I was like, yeah, if there isn't a huge expectation on quality, I could totally write a story in an hour. I guess I feel probably more the way you do about poetry, about stories. Like I don't want to say I don't have things invested in them because I definitely do, but I don't think as much of my self-esteem is invested in it. I don't know what it is about poems. I set out to learn poems a few years back, and I did it by writing at least a poem a month for a while. And, it improved a bit, but it's sort of like, it's like dance. Like I feel like I do dance. I've taken dance lessons and I do dance, but I never feel like I understand it as an art form. Like I don't understand how to be expressive in it or whatever else. And I think with poetry, it's so random for me. Like sometimes I'll have a really strong feeling and a clear image about it, and I'll sit down, I'll write it, and if I don't write it right away, it doesn't work. And then when that comes out, that's the most passable form of poetry. But I have literally no control over it, and I feel like that is the mark of somebody who's pretty amateur at it. I think you like if you asked me to edit any of them, I'd be completely lost. And they need editing. Let's be clear. They need an edit. They need focus, and as soon as I do that, I lose it all. I don't know why. Yeah. Anyways, it is interesting to hear the way that you focus. I mean, the idea of narrative in poetry was something I hadn't even encountered. I'd taken poetry classes too until
Wow.
I think pretty much TWS, the writer studio. I think that was the first time anyone was like, you got to look at the narrative of the poem. And I was like, poem narrative? What are you talking about? Poems are like descriptions that kind of double as feeling descriptions. And then I read poems with that perspective, and I was like, damn it, there's another thing I just didn't get. I don't know. Anyways, as a result, I'm immensely impressed that you created an entire chapbook of poems on a single topic. Because all my poems are random. It's like, whatever's going on in my life in that particular moment. I think it's deeply impressive. I do want to add, by the way, and I'll repeat this at the end, that people can buy your book. They can buy your chapbook. There's still copies left.
Copies.
But they have to. I will try to link it in the story, because the story is in the description. Stories. The poems that she just read are in the description if you guys have not put it together yet. So you can see their concrete shape down there. But if you want the rest of the poems, Dayna, they can order them from your personal website, correct?
That is correct. You can go to daynamahannah.com and then look in the book section. There's only one book in the book section. That's this one.
One more than me and Spencer.
Oh, but what Halem did is, because I had these printed, but she designed this like very cool jacket for the book. So it's made of wet or dry sandpaper. So we went to the studio and she did all the work on this, and it's meant to be this like tactile element that makes, when you like touch something and you're like, oh, that just gave me the heebie-jeebies. That's kind of what it's supposed to do, which is, fits the theme of the anxiety.
Right.
And
how cool
it's
is
also
that?
supposed to be like apocalypse resistant. That's what I call it.
Is that every copy, or is that like a special edition?
Yeah, that's a special edition. So you can just get the regular one.
I was sad. I just have the regular edition, no sandpaper.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, now it wrecks all your books if you put it in the bookshelf.
Why would you ever put it in the bookshelf? You're always going to be reading it.
That's right.
But I like how it's destroying the canon, just like climate change itself. It makes so much sense. Why wouldn't this book destroy all other books?
That's right. Yeah.
Which is sacrilegious, but
Hey, no, we're all about destroying old tomes here. Did you not watch the last Lick games?
Not a problem.
What did I miss?
We took famous passages in literature and played Mad Libs with them.
Oh, right. Yeah.
If you guys want to see that, by the way, it's on the channel. It's in the Lick Games playlist on the channel. That was myself and Spencer.
Inspired idea, by the way. I love that.
It was delightfully stupid.
That's what you want.
Well, Spencer, did you want to ask anything else? I have a couple of questions left, but I want to give you a chance if you need to.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I love the urgency that's kind of present in the poems. It's clear to me that, we're kind of talking to death, this idea of the climate anxiety, but that's what the book is about, and it's so clearly present in, the language choices and just from poem to poem. So I think it's actually, kind of romantic and, I'm stoked on the fact that you decided to self-publish this, because it's almost like these poems were too urgent, and the message is too urgent to just like even wait for anyone else to publish or edit it, or even it's just like these poems had to get out. So I'm really excited that you decided to do it, and just you mentioned the low stakes and whatever, but I'm glad that you decided to put the poems out in this form. I think it's absolutely perfect. Like there's something so just poetic itself in like the merging of content and form, and these poems fit the form so much, and the content fits the form so much that it's just it's amazing. There's these quick little hits of dark humor about the climate crisis. What's not to love? But I'd be curious to know more about like
The climate crisis?
I'm gonna have to have like a climate crisis detox after this
Yeah, that's
conversation.
right. Yeah.
And after the year we've had, but
Yeah.
like the process itself, I don't know, for anyone that's listening, myself included, just curious about what it's like to sort of self-publish and do it in the zine chapbook format. It's so punk rock, but it's also so like elegant
Yeah.
and cool. And I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit, of just like what it was like to kind of get your work out there and make those decisions.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Spencer. I had a lot of fun doing the whole process. I think that it's really nice to kind of like be a part of every step of the process in like a book coming to fruition. And it was just like really neat to kind of work with Halem, so it felt collaborative. I think that was another really awesome aspect to it is like we learned in TWS, writing doesn't always have to be solitary, and
Yeah.
it's definitely better if it's not. And I felt like Halem was someone that I was accountable to, and so that definitely helped me like finish a project. And then kind of getting her input, and then my friend Maggie McPhee gave me some like editorial feedback for it. And then like kind of created a very simple cover, and then I worked with the printers. There was a bit of a mess up, and we were also trying to get it printed in time for Vancouver Art Book Fair, so that it could sell there, because it was both my work, but also Halem's, because she always has a little booth at the Vancouver Art Book Fair. And and then we went to the studio where she does she volunteers, but she also does a lot of her own work there. And she seeing how much work that she puts into something, like, this looks so like, it's like so cool, so
Very
simple, and like, but it's also like a crazy amount of work to like get something to just fit properly. And like when you're working with a strange material like sandpaper, there's like some unforeseen things, and you're screen printing on it, and you have to go through a bunch of like practice rounds to make sure that you're like putting the right amount of ink on it. And so and then just kind of like formatting a book into a PDF, which I just like, those things seem fairly simple, but for me, I'm not like technology isn't the most intuitive thing for me. So it was awesome. And then like going to the printers, my friend drove me to the printers to pick up the books when they were done, and like seeing it in real life is just like such a feeling of joy. It's just like, wow, I made something.
Yeah.
And it was just every step of the process was fun. It was a learning experience. Sometimes it was frustrating, but I think that I don't know, I didn't even consider publishing it a different way. It was more of like a fun project that I wanted to just kind of get out there, and it was more of a challenge to myself. And so I highly recommend it. It's like a really cool thing to do, and it feels good,
Yeah, I mean, that would be pretty cool, actually. And I think it kind of cuts to the heart of, like, at least how I see art, which is artists are often just people that get possessed by this weird, pointless bullshit that is really, really hard to do. And then we're like, but I'm going to do it. And then, and then you put your heart and soul in it. And one day you show up with this bizarre thing that the rest of the world's like, well, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. And you're like, I don't know either, but it came to me and I wanted it done. So I did it. I had to learn 6 different things, and I had to this old art of glue spreading, and I found an old book and like that's like such the artist thing, which is it. You know, if anybody ever asked me why we do any of this, I don't think anybody can explain it. It's like a weird possession, possessed by these ideas and perpetually bored.
Vanity.
Let's
Let's
be
be honest. I do it so that I can be on the varietal and stare at myself for an hour while I interview other writers.
It is so hard, by the way, for people at home to stare at your own face talking and not notice everything about it. You know, you're like, oh wow, there's more wrinkles on that side, and the shadow I can like, and then being like, no, this is not why we're here. This is not a vanity exercise. So, my last question here. In a sentence, Dayna, just one sentence, not a run-on. Definitively, how do we fix the entirety of global warming? Make me and Spencer feel better.
I think you got to buy the book.
That's what I was gonna say.
I like that you really honestly took that so seriously, though. I don't know. And you don't have to answer that.
I should have gone with the first thing that came to my head, which was buy the book, have a laugh.
Yeah.
Which is maybe 2 sentences, but
The last thing I'll say is now that you've done it, the book's done, it's all finished, it's been out for a while, you wrote the poems a while ago. Do you feel more or less optimistic about the content of the book, the climate crisis, the things that we're facing? You can just one word answer, more or less optimistic.
From the heart.
more.
Oh,
Which is
wow. Wow.
a crazy thing to say.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, that's unheard of. You're supposed to get more cynical with age, so this is interesting.
I know.
Dana's too good for
Benjamin
this world,
Buttoning.
You bright golden soul, you.
Hello, there's a Mars. So obviously, I'm feeling optimistic.
Nice.
It's a joke.
Can we get through a stream without any direct or indirect references to Elon Musk? Oh my
No,
God.
don't say it.
Oh,
You blew it.
yeah, that's right. Well, it was already
So
there.
bad.
I'm not taking the blame for this. God, screw that, man.
Yeah.
More
Lord.
optimistic though. I think you have to be. I think you might be crazy to think it, but it's how else are we going to get through any of this?
Honestly, I don't know. Yeah, the nihilism that you're fighting. Also, when you said that, Roy, I really held back to say that before we started this conversation back in the waiting room, Rory reminded me that nothing matters. And that's how I could calm my nerves going into this interview.
To be fair, I say that at the beginning of a lot of streams because I know people get nervous. I mean, I guess if now that you've put it out there, if I could add a bit to that, my point is that the only things that matter are things that we make matter, really. I guess obviously there's actual impact like climate change and stuff like that. I'm being more poetic than I am extrapolating a philosophical position here. But when it comes to things like getting on stream and messing up your words or something like that, none of that really matters if you don't dwell on it and obsess on it, right? Nothing really matters unless you make a big deal out of it. Most people will laugh things off, as you say. So yeah. Also on a deeper level, nothing matters.
No, it worked. My armpits are only a little bit sweaty. So we're good.
Nothing matters. That's just science.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Can't argue with the facts.
Yes. All right. Well, I'm gonna do a little closing stuff here, but before I get into that zone, first of all, thank you so much for coming on, Dayna. It is undeniably a challenge to read to a tiny audience and know it's going out to the internet, the interwebs, as the kids are calling it. And I really appreciate you coming on and doing this. And Spencer, I also really appreciate you coming by, listening to the poems and asking questions.
Yeah, thank you both. It was far more enjoyable than I thought it was going to be.
It is fun. Yeah. You're like people give you permission to finally say the things you've been saying in your mirror while you brush your teeth, right?
That's right.
Every single artist has done the self-interview thing while they're walking alone and muttered to themselves, like, oh, my process is that. And I'm just asking them to do that here.
Practice my whole life.
So the formal stuff here. The website is varietal-literature.ca, and that will get you to all the stories from me, stories from Dayna, eventually stories from Spencer, looking directly at you.
Oh yeah.
I'm really excited for people to read your work. It is another completely unique voice. Although I will say that it shares in some themes that Dayna brings up, and it also does it with this sense of humor, but yours is a lot more surreal, which I love surrealism in art.
Yeah.
I think it's super cool. But over and above that, if you want to follow us on Twitter or Instagram, it's at varietal_lit. And that's how you're going to keep up to date with what we're doing. If you enjoyed this video, there is another in the live reading series. It was myself reading a short story, not poems. You can find that on our website, on our YouTube channel, which you should be on right now. And if you haven't already, if you could like the video if you liked it, and if you could subscribe, click the little bell, it'll give you notifications when we go live or put new videos up. That would be really great. And also, we are doing a thing, and we're very close. We're at 32 subscribers. We are trying to get to 35 subscribers. At 35 subscribers, I'm going to send clogs to Felix in Hong Kong. And then he's going to have to send back pictures of himself wearing them and that we'll post up on our social media, and I'll put it in a stream. So if you haven't already, please subscribe and get us up to 35. And then you'll find out what the next thing we're going to do for the next milestone is.
I get clogs. I hope it's me.
If I could figure out where to get clogs. It's the weirdest thing doing anything on YouTube, because you make these promises and then I'm like, can I get clogs? So I have all these searches about clogs, pricing them out. Is this a real clog?
Yeah, you don't want those knockoff clogs.
No, I don't want those modern rubber-soled clogs. I want the homegrown, home-hewn. And most importantly, over and above reading the selections that we have up in the Varietal right now from Dayna, the ones she just read, you can buy her book again on her website. Spencer's holding it up there. DaynaMahannah.com, which we'll have in the comments and also put in the description. Thank you so much for showing up. You're going to see a little screen that tells you things that you can do after this video if you want to keep watching our videos. But for us, we are done, and we will see you next week. And just a reminder, if you didn't watch Lit Games last week, we're doing different things and cool things in June. And I'm probably going to do a Choose Your Own Adventure story. And I think it might be about pirates. But that'll be pre-recorded, and it'll be a little bit more produced than some of the stuff we've done so far. But we'll see. We'll see what happens in June. Also, postcard romance stories are coming from Avalon in June.
Nice.
I'm promising it now so that she has to do it.
Yeah, good one.
We need deadlines.
Yeah,
That's
we
good.
need we need deadlines to ignore. Um, all right, guys, thank you so much. Now they're staring
you,
at a
Rory and
screen, but
Spencer.
they can still hear us.
Everyone.
They can still hear us.
Oh no.
I mean, be careful what you say, because now they can't see our faces. They don't know if we're joking. Oh my God,
Oh,
Spencer!
that's so creepy.
No, Spencer, don't show that. Oh God, it's horrible, Spencer. Why would you do this?
It's fine. It's fine. Just relax. I'm
Spencer,
normal.
this is definitely
normal.
this is a crime.
Everything I do is normal. It's fine.
I am the most normal person that has ever existed.
Normalize normalcy.
Not creepy at all. That's our tagline at the Varietal. Not creepy at all.
That's how I live my life.
Inspired.